Hello and welcome to Jessie James Beads here on Facebook. I hope that you're having a beautiful day today, no matter what it is you're getting up to. So I feel like I'm finally getting a handle on what time it is. I know it's 11 AM for you on the East Coast. Here in the United Kingdom, it is just after 4 PM. Today is the 16th of December. We're getting pretty close now to the festivities. So I hope that you are feeling calm and cool and collected in all that you are doing. Now, Facebook is being super tricky today and it isn't showing me whether I'm being broadcast at all or not. So, if you could give me a quick wave, that would be amazing, so I know if you're there or not, because as at the moment, I can't tell if there's anybody out there. I kind of feel a bit like I'm talking to myself, so who knows what's happening right about now. Is there anybody out there? I'm going to take you back down to the overhead so that you can have a look at what we have got for you today. I have absolutely adored working with these Patricia Healey pieces. The quality of work is absolutely amazing, and now I'm no metalsmith by a long chalk. So it's always really tricky for me to even attempt something like this. Hello, we have some comments. So Bonnie is in and Anne is in from California. Hello, my lovelies. It's good to see you. And thank you so much for dropping me a quick hello so that I know that you are indeed out there. Like I say, Facebook, a little bit tricky sometimes. There are 3 strands that I have looked at, and the one that I have chosen to work with today is the Heart Copper strand. Now, I've popped the links into today's video for you. Should you wish to check them out, then you can have a look at those. They are absolutely stunning. I want to show you those a little bit while everybody pops on in. Hello, my darling Sarah. Hello to Rosanna, snowing in Montana. Well, we don't have any snow as yet, but we will see. We will see. The bets are good for a white Christmas, but I'll share that when I see it, because I'm not convinced it's going to happen over here in Blighty. Anyway, it's my pleasure to be with you here on Jessie James Beads this morning for you guys. It's this afternoon over in the United Kingdom. Do drop a like and a comment on the video, because it makes Facebook aware that, in fact, people are out there. You never can tell. Let me just pop over and say hello. Hello. Hope you're doing okay. What have you been up to today? Where are you calling in from? It's lovely to see you, so to speak, to see you. Let's have a look at those copper strands. They are absolutely gorgeous. So these are Patricia Healey work. The Dragonfly is absolutely stunning. Now, it's a real talent to be able to make this happen. When I work in copper sheet like this, I tend to bruise my fingertips primarily, and I certainly don't ever get anywhere with soldering. Not very effective at all. So this is definitely a piece of art. They are absolutely glorious. One of the pieces that returns into my designs time and time again is the sun, and this is known as the, I want to say, the rising sun. Let me just check. Yeah, I think it's the Rising Sun strand. So this is an absolute beaut. Really, really gorgeous. I love that design, and I can think of very many things I would want to do to add to that. Catherine is calling in from Futureland, Australia, so hello to you. Helena is in from New York. Catherine is in from... I've already said hello to Catherine. Teresa is in from Tampa, and Lizzie is in from Washington State. Now, all of your messages are disappearing as soon as they're here. I love Facebook. It's super, super helpful. So there's our Rising Sun strand. If you haven't seen these before, they are absolutely stunning. Really, really beautiful work, and certainly far beyond something that I could manage to make happen. So that's the Rising Sun. There's your Dragonfly. The strand that we're going to work with today is the Heart strand. And what I wanted to do was to show you how to create your own heart in a very simple design, easy for absolutely everyone to get a hold of. You don't need a huge amount of tools. And we're working with simply 1 strand of wire. Paul is in from Alaska, where it is indeed very cold. I am sure that it is. So many apologies if I don't reply to all of your messages, purely because they disappear just about as soon as I see them. So that's a bit of a shame. So many apologies if I don't give you a shout out. I am indeed really delighted that you're here. So what I want to show you today is how to create this tiny little heart form. Now, I'm saying tiny little heart form. It's not large, it's not small. You can create this in any size that you want, and it is crafted from a single piece of wire, which is really lovely because it's not overly complicated. A lot of people that I work with when I'm tutoring and when I'm showing on my YouTube channel, they're a little bit afraid of wire. So I like to make things that are super simple and accessible for people who are newer to wire to work with. So there's a second piece of wire that I'm going to show you how to add down at the bottom, and this can be done with one of these gorgeous hearts from the heart strand, or just as a simple dropper using the beads from the heart strand. So all of this has been made from the one strand, including the piece I'm going to demonstrate with you. And that's one of the things I love about getting a strand through, is that the possibilities are endless. You can, if you want to, restrand one of those just across the wrist and they will look absolutely stunning. But if you want to do lots of things with them and share that love about, then you absolutely can. Now, I'm working with raw copper today in a round wire. You can work with whatever wire you desire. I am suggesting 18 gauge though, because it's fluid enough to do the things that we want it to do, but strong enough to hold its shape afterwards. So Emily is in. Hello, my darling. Kelly's in from windy Michigan. A bit different from my heart, says Rosanna. I made a piece, oh gosh, about 18 months ago now, and rather accidentally. It was more like an anatomically correct human heart, which I found quite amusing. It wasn't on purpose, and it was completely after the event that I noticed it. So I'm trying to look glamorous and festive today for you, so if it's a bit scary, many apologies. Don't very much wear makeup usually on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, shall we get cracking? Let's have a quick last look at those pieces on the board before we start making our own. I've also got a couple of things I want to share with you later on. But we will get to that all in due course. So I'm just going to leave that over in the corner. Hopefully I won't knock it flying. I'm going to pop this one up at the top purely because I've linked them in the video description and I want you to have access to that information all the time. So if I pop these things over to the side, I can show you the bits and bobs that I'm going to work with today. Now, this puffy copper heart is an absolute work of art. This is from the Patricia Healey Heart Strand, crafted in copper, which I absolutely love working with. So we're going to be using one of those. You get 3 hearts on the strand. You get these dotted ones and then this giant puffy one. Giant by comparison, a little bit larger. And you also get a plethora of beads, spacers and caps. One of the things I did want to show you actually very quickly is when you find these, I've always known them as daisy spacers. If you put 2 of them side by side, they nestle and they give you a double daisy, which I really, really love. So you can use them as spacers between your beads, of course. But in terms of versatility, I like stacking them up and nestling them together. Have I put that down upside down? I have indeed. That's just because I'm so very clever. And we've got some more pieces here that we can add on if we want to. So if I pop that down, you can see all of those items you get on the heart strand. So I'm going to start off with around about 10 or 11 inches of that round wire. Now this is raw copper to match in. Teresa is being absolutely delightful. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. And a double daisy, that just sounds so fun, said Sarah. Absolutely. You're so kind. Thank you very much, darlings. I can only apologise that I can't see all of your comments. I can see about 3 of them. And if I'm not looking directly at the screen when they pop up, they're just out of position and gone and lost to me. What I will do, I promise, is at the end of the video I'll check back in, and if there are any queries at all, I will try to answer them at the end of the video. So let's get on with our tutorial for the day. So 10 or 11 inches in length. This is round wire. I am working with uncoated raw copper. Now you'll see that the heart has actually been sealed. So your raw copper on the heart has been sealed and it will stay that colour. You can of course get non-tarnish copper wire. I choose to work with raw copper wire because I absolutely adore how it darkens with age, and I'll show you some pieces a little bit later, the colour that will turn given time and wear. So as ever, I'm making sure that both of these ends have been cut with the flush side of my flush cutters. And then I'm going to warm that wire through. Now the warming through is a very important aspect of working with wire. It means that your pieces will be more fluid in the creation part. And it also means that it's just slightly easier for you to deal with. So I'm just running thumb and forefinger over this to get that nice and warm and fluid. And then I'm going to pop down about 2 inches from the end and pop a little right angle bend on there. So if I show you that from the side, you can see what it is that we're doing. Now if I need to drop the light down, I've got a new light, so we can just drop the intensity down a little bit so there's less glare, but just enough to see what we're doing. So I'm going to use my round nose pliers to create a small bail up at the top. You could just as equally use your multi-step bail makers if you have them, and if you don't have them and you're thinking of something to ask for a gift after the event, they are definitely worth the investment. I love working with them. I'm going to show you with the round nose pliers though, because I know that many of us will have a pair of these anyway. So if I pop those in just above where I've created that bend and just roll that around, see I get the first half of that loop created. I can then support the first half of that loop and just draw the tail all the way around and over the top. So I've got that circular form at the top of my long length of wire, and I'm just going to make sure that that's nice and flat before I move to wrapping around the neck of the piece. So this is what I'm going to refer to as the neck. I am just going to check in and see if there are any instant inquiries. Anne loves her multi-bail pliers. Absolutely fantastic. Definitely worth getting the stepped bail making pliers, says Rosanna. They are both amazing products. Really, really useful to have. So I flattened down my round form, and this is going to be my bail, but it's exactly the same way that we would create the first half of a wrapped loop for, let's say, a rosary link or something like a connector. So I'm going to support that circular form just where there's a single pass of wire, and I'm going to bring that tail all the way around the neck of the design. I'm going to take that around a couple of times. So I've got 2 turns around the neck of the design, and I'm just going to very, very gently tighten that up slightly. All I'm doing here is just very carefully and cautiously flattening everything down so that it sits neatly how I would like it to appear. Now, if you want to have a swirl on your design, let's choose one with one of the hearts. You can do this at the beginning or the end. It's absolutely up to you. I'm going to show you the simpler of the 2 ways. If you're a bit more mastered in your aspect of wire work, you can pop your coil on at this section of wire, and later on you can trim away at the back. But I'm going to show you the slightly simpler version today, which is to have as many coils as you want on the neck of the design. So I'm going to pop in with those flush cutters, checking that I'm indeed just cutting that tail away before I squeeze and trim to the scrap pot. So once that is in the scrap pot, I want to just make sure that my coils are nice and neat and tidy. So my wire is coming over the top and around. I've truncated it just here. So what I want to do is move the pliers around in the same direction as that wire. And in doing so, what I'm doing is I'm just smoothing the very end so that it sits down a little bit closer to the neck of the design and is less likely to catch on anything. Once that's a little bit more neat and tidy, you can decide if you're happy with that being up this way, or you can flip it over. Choose whichever is your favourite direction. Just checking in for questions. Sarah also enjoys the stepped bail makers. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Because they are rather, rather fabulous. So I'm just going to put a little bit of extra warmth just at the top of the section we're going to work next. Whenever you are creating bends in your copper wire, any wire that is copper based is going to work in a very similar way, whether it's coated or if it has a special coating on it which changes the colour, or if it seals the colour, then you will have a very similar effect if there's copper at the core. And in winding around at the top, we start to work hard and ever so slightly from the point of contact. So this will get slightly tense quite quickly. So I'm just going to put a little bit of warmth in at the top before I pop my bent chain nose pliers underneath the design. Now I work with these every single day. They're my favourite piece of pliers, my favourite pair of pliers. One of the reasons I love working with them is that I can hold underneath the design and show you exactly what it is I'm doing. So I'm going to use my thumb to push the wire away from me and smash into the scrap pot, obviously, because why wouldn't you? So we've got quite a soft bend there. We actually want that to be just a little bit firmer, so I'm going to take the wire further than I want it to exist in its final form, and then just draw it back ever so slightly. Now, you don't need any special tools to do this. You can use your multi-step bail makers to create the next shape if you desire. However, it makes it quite difficult for me to show you what's happening, so I am going to use a marker pen for the next part of the design. So if I show you the orientation that we're working with, I've got the bail sitting like so that I know that I can put a strand or a ribbon or a necklace through that later if I want to wear this as jewellery. And my wire is coming out to the side. So I'm going to take my marker pen and I'm going to use that to create the first lobe of the heart. And all I'm going to do is just press the wire around. We've just warmed that, so we've very, very easily got quite a nice circular form off to one side. I'm then going to just use the warmth of my forefinger on my dominant hand just to draw this down slightly. Now if I use the straight line on my board here, you can see that I'm trying to draw the tail of the wire to sit as if the bail that we have at the top is the 12 o'clock position. I want that wire to come down to the 6 o'clock position near enough. So let's see if we have any questions at the moment. Anne says I mostly use sterling silver. I am now learning how to use copper. If you're working with a raw copper, it can work quite similarly to a nice quality sterling silver. So in theory, if you're working with wire, it should work quite the same. In terms of soldering with it, there are some differences which I am certain you will come across as you go. So what I would need to do now is to make a small loop down at the bottom at this 6 o'clock position, and that's so that we can add on anything that we want to work with next. So I've got a little heart on this piece, and I've just got some beads added on this piece, so you can make this over and over again. You can even make a super long chain and just keep adding extra jointed sections. So what I'm going to do now is just add again a little bit of warmth down at the bottom here. Pop in with those round nose pliers and rotate them back up. So if I pop the pliers in and show you at that angle, what I'm going to do is move them a little further down and then rotate that around to begin with. If I show you what I've got so far, got the wire coming back out to the right hand side, pop those round nose pliers back in and then draw that tail all the way around. So we have a really beautiful fluid loop forming down at the bottom. So hopefully that is all clear thus far. So what I'm going to do now is try and replicate the angle that I have on the first half of the heart. So I'm just going to push this down very, very gently and start angling out exactly the same way as we did on the first side. Not too far, but just to get a little bit of heat in the first piece that we're going to work with. And then again, we will use my marker pen, or you can use your stepped bail makers to get a second lobe of the heart in. So I'm just going to tip that away from you slightly and draw the wire around. So if I draw that down and then withdraw the marker pen, what we can do is see if we have the symmetry that we're looking for. Now, if you struggle to make symmetrical hearts, just lean into it and go for an asymmetrical one instead. There's no rules that say they have to be exactly the same. I've seen some beautiful pieces over the years with asymmetrical hearts and have designed with asymmetry myself many, many a time. So you can see we've created our basic heart form for the moment. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a push to get it to sit how I want it to. If I pop that down on the board, you can see where we are at thus far. So I hope that this all makes sense so far. We are going to continue on now. So I'm going to pop underneath again with my bent chain nose pliers and hold that heart in position. And what I want to do is to create almost a right angle bend just at the point where the wire's crossing beneath that first bend. So if I support that and draw it back up, it's not quite a right angle, but it's close enough. And that's happening at the space where we made that first bend to create the first half of the heart. What I'm going to do now is switch to the opposite orientation with my pliers. So far I've kind of been coming up, so that you can get a 2D event going on. We're now going to take those into the opposite orientation. My pliers are now in the same orientation as the board. What I'm going to do is to support that bend we've just made, and it really is just on the bend. So I'm going to hold that in position, and I'm going to push the wire back and away from me. Very carefully, just going to show you that sideways so you can see that it sits right on that first angle that we created. And once we have that into position, we can take this tail and wrap it around the neckline. I'm just going to check in to see if there are any questions. Jessie James Bead says, all heart. Absolutely every time. I do love making hearts. I love to share the love. So you can see that we have that not quite a right angle, quite a soft angle at the moment, but I just want to show you stage by stage so that it becomes as clear as possible. What I'm going to do now is to switch my pliers back into the same orientation as the desk and just hold where we created that bend. I'm going to bring the tail of the wire so that it starts to wrap around the upright section of the neck of the heart. If I pull that around just bit by bit, you can see that if I open that out slightly, you can see that we're making almost like a bobby pin loop at the end there, or one of those ever famous hairpin racetracks. So if I just show you that from a couple of different angles, you can see where we are going. Now what I want to do is just pinch this closed, but by hand. If I pinch this by hand, then I can judge to just make sure that I'm happy with all of the sizes. Now you can see that the right hand of my heart here is slightly smaller than the left hand. If that's a problem for you and you want a little bit more symmetry, you've got a couple of options to work with at this stage. First of all, you can nibble away at the size that we have just down here where we made that first bend. And if I hold the pliers slightly over to the left, I can pull the end of the wire and just make that slightly smaller so that you can see we get a little bit more symmetry. Another option that you have is to alter where the loop down at the base sits. So if I wanted slightly more on the right and slightly less on the left, I'm going to support this just gently up at the top. What I'm going to do is put my round nose pliers in and just rotate around slightly. And in doing so, you're able to just slightly change how much wire is given to each half of the heart. Now, if you don't mind asymmetry, then you are all good to go. But I do like to show you potential issues that you might have in your work on the fly. It gives you an opportunity to kind of fix anything that is bothering you before we get too far into the design. Another thing that you can do at this stage is pop your marker pen back into position, or whatever round form you're using, just to get those shapes exactly how you want them to sit. At this point, whether you messed around with the shape or not, you should have got the basic form of your heart into position. And what we need to do now is to continue by bringing the tail of the wire to wrap around that central core. Now what can happen if you pull this really hard is that you will end up eating away a little bit at the wire on the second side of your heart. So I'm just going to support that whilst I pull the tail over the top. I'm going to do it in small stages because by its very nature, I tend to get my hand in the front of what you're looking at. So you can see that we've taken just a little bit of wire from the left. If that happens to you, what you can do is flip the design over and just reverse that around in the opposite direction so that that wire goes back into the design. So I'll just bring that down slightly. We're going to continue by wrapping that tail of wire around the central core, and you can help with your chain nose pliers to get that to finish off if you need to. So we're going to grip very firmly with the non-dominant hand and bring that tail around until it has filled enough of that core that you're happy with how that all looks. So what I'm going to do now is trim away any excess wire that I have. Now this is quite tense because it has seen a little bit of action, but what I'm going to do is use the flush side of my cutters to trim that to about an inch, inch and a quarter maybe. Get rid of that in the scrap pot, and what we're going to do now is add on the coil that sits over the front of that nexus point, and it just helps to keep things tidy. So what I'm going to do with my coil is pop my round nose pliers in, and I'm going to create that coil at 90 degrees to the design. Start off by making a circular form. Start to get that to wrap around. So if I open that up to the camera, just very, very gently, small movements at a time, we're going to get a coil going on. Pop those flat faces of the bent chain nose pliers into position and draw that coil towards the centre of the design. So just taking that into position. And you can decide whether you want to flip that down or flip that up. One of the things I quite like to do is to take the neck of the design and bring that back slightly, and then flip the coil upwards. And I'll show you that as soon as it's into position. You can do that by hand because it's 18 gauge copper and it's very workable. So we're just going to push that back so that it sits against the neck. And you have your basic heart shape to work with. Now you can modify that if you wish to. So I would probably just bring that down ever so slightly to make a slightly more stout and squat heart. So that is the basics of your copper heart design. What I want to do now is to integrate the beautiful Patricia Healey puffy copper heart into the mix. I have a spare section here of the round raw copper wire in 18 gauge, and I'm just going to make sure that that's straight so that I can thread any beads that I want onto it. I'm going to give that a little bit of a warm, and I'm going to show you now. I had a request earlier to show you how to make a simple loop rather than a wrapped loop, so that is how I am going to attach the heart, the copper puffy heart, to the heart frame that we've just made. I'm going to use a simple loop. Now the end of my wire is a little bit mangled because this was an offcut from an earlier project. So I'm going to trim away that excess on the end. Don't be afraid to do that. And I'm going to turn a double coil down at the bottom. So let's get in very, very close to the end of the pliers, very close to the end of the wire, and start rotating that around. If you get very close to the end of the wire, quite often you'll hear my pliers go snicked, and off they fall. So I've started by rotating the pliers around, opening and closing to get that round form. And I've gone around for the one turn first. I'm going to squish that nice and flat before using my flat facing, these are my bent chain nose pliers, to continue rotating around until we get a lovely double loop made up. So by a double loop, we've gone from the start point around in a circle, we've done a second circuit, and we've got two pieces of wire spiralling out from that centre point. Let's see if we have any questions at the moment. There are no questions that I can see. As I mentioned earlier, I don't always get to see the questions on the live, purely because Facebook doesn't like me very much. So to turn a straight line on the coil, I'm going to pop underneath with my bent chain nose pliers. I'm going to grip very, very firmly with my dominant hand, just at the point where the wire comes away from that double coil. I'm going to grip the double coil carefully and pull that away until it sits at 90 degrees. So I give that a bit of a squeeze, just strengthen the point as it comes out, just strengthen rather at the point where the wire comes away from that double coil. Give that a bit of a squish and a squeeze. So I think I'm going to put some beads down at the bottom. I'm going to start with one of these beautiful filigree bead caps. And then I'm going to go for one of the super sparkly faceted rondelles. I don't know what the colourway is called, but it's almost like a champagne, cognac maybe, not entirely sure. I love it, whatever it is. So I've got my bead caps and a bead sitting in there. You can squish those ones, they're a little bit flexible if you want to. And then I'm going to find the entry point for my puffy copper heart and just pop that on. What I should have done probably beforehand is just double checked that that was going to be easy for me, but as in fact it was easy, there is not a problem. So if I just lay that down for a second, when you're creating on the fly, as it were, it's really nice to just be able to not finish things, lay that down. Is that going to look pretty? Do I like it? Do I want to add in any beads from my bead soup collection? I like that as it is. So what I'm going to do is show you how to finish that off and attach it to a next loop above. Now, as I said, I had a question earlier about how to create a simple loop. If you are working with things that are not heavy, and won't be expected to take any stresses. So if you were making a bracelet, for instance, and you wanted to attach something on the end, and then you were going to put a clasp into position, you'd absolutely need to use a wrapped loop for strength and security. If you're going to make something such as a pair of earrings or a little dangle off the bottom of a pendant, you absolutely can use an open or closable, or in this instance, we're going to call it a simple loop. So I'm going to grip the wire that it comes out of the top, and this was only an offcut. It was probably around about 5 inches in length, but it does depend on how big you want the coil at the bottom and how many things you want to add onto it. So the length of the wire is entirely in your control. I am using offcuts today. So I'm going to grip a hold of that round, again it's 18 gauge raw copper wire, and I'm just going to draw that forwards at a right angle at 90 degrees to the front of my design, like so. What I can do here is I can estimate that I don't need all of that wire to create a really good sized loop. If I wanted to make a large loop, you can absolutely, I'll tell you what I'll do, I will grab those multi-step bail making pliers and I'll make an oversized loop, and in a moment I will show you for why. The process is exactly the same if you're going to make a small open and closable simple loop. If you're going to use round nose pliers, process is the same if you're going to use my multi-step bail makers. So in terms of size, I think I'm going to use step 5. So we've got 1, which is the smallest, 6, which is the largest. I'm going to use number 5. What I'm going to do is get those on the right hand side and just rotate that around to get the first half of that loop into position. So hopefully you can see it's slightly tricky with the heart. So if I turn that sideways, you'll be able to see I've got the first half of that loop in shape that's formed. So I'm going to pop back in now with the bail makers. I'm going to draw the tail of the wire all the way around now. So if I hold those upside down, you can see that the wire's coming through, and I just need to push that past the heart so that that closes off and you get the complete shape. Exactly the same process as if you were using the round nose pliers is the same way that you can create a simple loop with the multi-step bail makers. These just make much larger ones. So I'm going to make sure that that's nice and flat, and also that it is still coming away at the angle I want it to come away at. So if I just give that a little bit of a squish and a squeeze, hopefully you can see that. I think this light is much better than my old light. I hope that you agree. And I'm just going to turn that sideways so that you can see indeed what is happening just here. So for the next thing, I need to get right into the heart of this and trim the last little tail of wire away. And I'm going to look very carefully that I'm only trimming the one section of wire. It's become my favourite saying is look twice, cut once, and then you don't have to cry at all. So you can see now that we have what is essentially an opening and closing loop. Now to make your opening and closing or simple loops much safer, what I like to do is to get them completely perfect. Make sure that that tail of wire sits right down in the correct position. So I'm forming that by hand, just to make sure that I'm happy with that shape before I give that a squishing. Or if you know me well and if you've been following me for a couple of years, you'll know that this is the nom nom. So I'm opening and closing my flat facing pliers several times. And what I'm doing is I am getting those copper molecules to get a little bit more firm in their abilities. So we're setting that shape in the wire. Let's see if we have any other questions at the moment. I think Maria's cat has joined us. I'm not entirely quite sure. Nom nom nom, said Sarah. It's very, very true. Thank you very much, Lizzie. That's much appreciated. So we have our form correct. This is our loop. It could be teeny, it could be large. I'll show you why this is a large loop in just a second. Now, when you've created a simple loop or an open and closable loop, you can have maybe 3 or 4 times that you can open and close it safely before you start weakening the wire. I'm going to show you now how to open and close that very, very simply, exactly the same way as you would a jump ring. So you're just kind of opening half of it like a door. So if my hand is the loop, what we're going to do is turn one way up and towards you. We're only changing the shape of half of the loop and we're keeping the other half exactly as it was. So once you have your open and closable loop, you can pop that through the design like so. Check that it's hanging in the orientation that you want it to hang if there's a front and a back. On this piece, you're just looking to align the form at the bottom so that that sits neatly. On the heart shape at the top, you do have a front and a back because you've got that coil. Now, if you didn't want the coil and you just wanted to abut those 2 wires together, you absolutely can, in which case it doesn't matter which way round it goes, really. Now, to close that simple loop up, I'm going to support the side that we opened. Just make sure I can see that, make sure you can see that. Yep. What we're going to do is just close that back up with the heart in the correct position and make sure that that has closed up neatly. You can see that the tail of the wire meets the nexus just above the angle that we created. So if I pop that down on the board, that is in essence what we are looking to achieve today. And I love that you can achieve that with the round forms as well, the rising sun. You could absolutely 100% work with this gorgeous dragonfly as well. I've got some dragonflies to show you in a minute, just like bragging rights. Now, the reason I made an oversized open and closable loop for this piece was because I wanted to show you how you can stack these up. You can have super long decals on your walls, decorative ideas. So I'm going to open and close the open and closable loop just one more time. Take the heart we've just made together out. Find a heart that I made earlier on. And you can see this double spiral that we created at the bottom actually can act as another loop. So if I just hold this in the correct orientation, you can see the gap. We're going to pop that through the loop here. And then I'm just going to do this by hand because I know that the copper will actually work for me one or two more times before it gets a bit tired. That's the wrong way up. So you can see that the central core is spinning on the spiral sections. So you can move that around until it makes you happy in terms of your design and style. So from the one Patricia Healey heart strand, let me just pop these others out of the way for a second. I've created all of these pieces just by adding in some 18 gauge round raw copper wire. So you get all of these spacers, all of these beautiful crystals. And there's another one there as well, which you could add on again. And you could just simply chain them endlessly up and down until you're happy with what you're seeing. I have had an absolute blast with these designs, as I mentioned earlier on, and if you missed it, I am no metalsmith. I can make a basic ring and a basic bangle, and that's about it. I tend to be a little bit clumsy, so me and fire in a studio, it's not really a very good idea, to be perfectly honest. And soldering is... It's tricky. It's tricky. I know that there are lovely, wonderful people out there who are undertaking furthering your skills, and I admire you hugely. I like wire because I can make it do things, and then I can kind of reuse it if I need to. So I wanted to show you what I'm going to do with my gorgeous dragonfly. I'm going to add it to my dragonfly crown. So I made a crown with dragonflies on. Inspired entirely by Shakespeare Midsummer Night's Dream. I love dragonflies, I love butterflies, I love all kinds I like jumping spiders actually. I think they're really, really cute. Let's take you back down to the board and show you those gorgeous Patricia Healey pieces again. So what you can also do with these hearts is you can embellish them further, and if I can find the piece of wire that I put here earlier, no, it's decided to go walkabout. Here's some of the wrong wire, but I'm going to show you very quickly what you can do as well. If I can find the end of this wire, that would be absolutely super. No, it's just broken. That's super handy. Okay, so I'm just going to grab a sheet of wire off the end here. There we go. And then hopefully there will be a bead around for me to work with. So if you want to embellish the side of your heart as well, especially as you get some of the, where are they? The mini crystals. What have I done with them? I don't know where they are. I'll have to find another pair. So what you can absolutely do as well is embellish the side of your heart earlier. I'm just using some 24 gauge wire here, and I've only grabbed about 5 inches off the reel because that's all I could get off it. I'm going to wind on to the side of that heart. I'm just going to take that tail around probably at least 4 times just for the sake of security. Now I'm just working with some round gold colour wire just because it is what I had to hand, and I've designated that this is the front because you can see that coil over the surface. So I'm going to trim that away at the back, make sure that tail goes away into the scrap pot, and what I need to do now is find a bead to add on to the side. I thought I had some, they have indeed disappeared. So let me just trim the other end of this wire, and then we're going to take some off the other strand. That will work really, really nicely. So I'm just going to trim this from the rising sun strand, on which there are some absolutely fabulous spacers. So I'm going to grab 2 of these to work with. Let's see how many we've got. There's a third one. and a fourth one. So I'm going to borrow these spacers from the Rising Sun strand to show you an additional technique to even further all heart your heart. So I'm working here with a round wire in 24 gauge. This is a gold colour just to make it easier to see. Oh geez, that circlet was a lot of work. You are not kidding. It took forever. Lizzie says, love your crown. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that hugely. Your skill level is too high for you to denigrate it. So, oh, bless your heart. That's really kind of you. Thank you, lovelies. I appreciate all of your kindnesses. I really do. And that is, honestly, it's from the heart. I honestly, I really, really appreciate it. It's very, very kind of you. Thank you. I might cry. I'm not going to cry. It's fine. So I have wound on about 4 or 5 times with my 24 gauge wire. Now you can do this with 26 if you need to. And I've just grabbed some random beads from the Rising Sun strand. These are fabulous, almost barrel shaped beads, and I'm just going to put them down one side of the design. The finer gauge wire is coming off the top of my heart frame, so I'm going to support that bead, take the tail of wire and push it up inside the heart, and I'm going to wrap, let's go with 4 times, around the core wire, the firmer wire, which is the right hand lobe of my heart form. So we have there 4 wraps. Let's have a look. I think I did it 5 times to begin with, so I might as well keep going with that level of accuracy. I'm going to add in a second bead just to show you what you can do to add in some extra flavour to your designs. So again, I'm going to sit the bead against the heart, and you can see that that's just sitting neatly because it's got such a lovely flat side to it. I'm going to support that bead, take the tail all the way around, push the leading edge of that finer gauge wire up inside the heart, and then give that a bit of a spin around. So that's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and that's 5. So you can continue to add another couple of beads. Now, dependent on what you have available to you, you could do 2 on either side at the top, or you could be asymmetrical. You could have symmetry in your heart but asymmetry with some beads down the side. So we could continue that same technique to add those other 2 beads into position. If I had any manual dexterity, I'd be able to just line those up for you. And then what we can do is just take one of these spare pieces and just lay that down at the bottom, so you can imagine for yourself what that will look like. They are beautiful, beautiful strands to work with, and you do get ever such a lot to play with. The skill level in these is absolutely crazy good. So I don't know if you saw, but the other day there's a poll going on the Jessie James beads. I think it was the main page. Sarah will tell me if I've told you the wrong place. It might be in Secret Stash. You'll have to ask Sarah. And it was just asking you what you wanted to see a little bit more of for 2022, which is just around the corner now. So do you want to see us designing on the fly with bead soup? Bead soup is such a great thing to have. I don't have mine with me because obviously that would mean I was prepared and professional, and somehow it's in the other room because I was playing with it earlier. I do have something I made with my bead soup though. Do you want to see more bead soup designs? What is it that you would like to see from us? So I have got a beautiful bag of bead soup, and these are just some of the pieces that I found in quite a random grab. I must admit I was drawn colour-wise to greens and blues and browns. It felt a little bit autumnal, and at the time I was feeling a little bit autumnal, even though we are very definitely in winter. So tell us on the poll what you want to see more of. Pop it in the comments if you feel that way inclined, and I will report it back to Sarah. Another thing that I want to get your input on is, do you want to see a chaos bangle? I'm going to flash that up real quick because I can show you how to make that on a future live. Tell me if that's what you'd like to see, and I'll have a word to Sarah and see if she'll let me loose with that. I love the necklace you are wearing. Would you do a tutorial? There is a tutorial for the single step piece. It's simply a variation on my equinox design. I can have a look at creating a separate one for this, but I don't like to repeat it completely the same because people get bored of me. Gorgeous, love design on the fly. Thank you so much, Jem. And yes, the poll is in Jessie James' Secret Stash. It is in the Secret Stash. So if you are not already on Jessie James' Secret Stash, go and have a look. Add yourself in. Lots of people sharing their beautiful creativity with Jessie James beads. so much things to inspire you every day. So much things, I have lost the art of English. Do you want to see one of these? That's coming up soon. Do you want to see one of these? That's coming up soon. I have got so much waiting to show you and to share with you that I'm just too excited. I need to put things away before I get into trouble. Let's have a quick look back down at those glorious Patricia Healey strands. There we go. So all of these created with a very simple technique to create that heart form. You can add as few or as many, and if you want to keep these coils at the base fairly small, you can add on with smaller loops. But I just love this because it's an almost instant present to make for somebody, just to show them that you do love them. Teresa says you're a tease. True story. Absolutely true story, my friends. Well, what can I say? As far as the schedule shows, I won't be back with you now until the first Thursday in January. Well, I am looking forward to seeing you already. Like I said, tell us what you want to see and we will endeavour to do our best to share with you what it is that you're looking to learn. In the meantime, stay safe. Have a lovely festive period, no matter what holiday you're celebrating. If you're celebrating, have a good one. Love you guys and I'll see you soon. Bye.